Ladies and gentlemen, presenting the Professor Greg Dooley and the Pundit Steve Clark. Men, take the mic.
It's the Professor and the Pundit with Greg Dooley and Steve Clark, and as always, we're proudly presented by Nick Hopwood, who's a certified financial planner, founder, and president of Peak Wealth Management. Retire with peak confidence. We invite you always to visit Nick's website at peakwm.com. Greg, how are you?
Great to be back in the big house to watch some football, and just got that little spring feel of a real game. And the crowd was hyped to see number 19 and other people, so it was really fun.
Michigan says an estimated 40 to 45,000 people watched this spring scrimmage.
You may be entitled to financial compensation.
Yeah, that's a little bit of a stretch, Michigan people, but okay. There were a lot of people there. I did notice also that a lot of people kept coming.
Yeah.
Because it seemed like the weather almost got a little better and the thing was drawn out. People kept coming in and not leaving.
So it was nice to see that the quarterbacks that we wanted to see played more than one drive. That was nice.
Yes.
We saw Bryce Underwood and Jadyn, the two people who look like to be competing for the number one job, although Mike Keene, who has been injured for most of the spring practice sessions, did not participate in this. But we got to see what Bryce Underwood and Jadyn look like. They took all of the snaps. One for the blue team, that was Underwood, and Jadyn for the maize team. The highlight came at the very end of the game. 3 players touched it before Underwood launched it around the goal line over the top of the secondary, finding Jalen Hoffman for an 88-yard touchdown, the only receiving touchdown, and it ended the scrimmage. It was about as improbable as Mullings' big play at the end of the USC game.
Yeah, a lot of fun, and for the rewarded, those who stayed,
yes,
if you will.
Some people left to get out of traffic early and probably missed the biggest play of the game.
That's a classic Dooley move, is to sneak out the Irish goodbye of Michigan Stadium. Yeah, it was a little tough to watch, the offense. You were hoping for more fireworks out of either one of the quarterbacks, especially Bryce, and didn't see a lot. But again, the game day, the feel, defense looked pretty good at times, but what's the takeaway on offense for you, man?
Takeaway is that you have to have faith that the offense is going to be much better, because it wasn't very tangible in this one. Bryce has the tools. He demonstrated that. He can throw deep. This wasn't a spring situation where nobody threw the ball deep and every throw was like last year, 5 yards past the line of scrimmage at best. There were many deep passes. Bryce Underwood has the velocity to throw to the far sideline. He can run. He can roll out to buy time. You just have to execute. And Underwood had 5 deep passes, but only the last one at the end of the game was caught. He also had 2 delay of game penalties, which is something you don't think about, that you think every quarterback's going to get you into a situation and never take a delay of game. But when you're a true freshman inserted in that situation, these are the little things that actually happen that nobody buys, but it is something you have to work through. There was a fumbled snap also on one of the plays as well. But to be fair to both Underwood and both quarterbacks, there was very little from the anticipated starters at the skill positions. There was very little Donovan McCauley, who caught one great grab, and that was it. Samaj Morgan just had a couple of targets. Kendrick Bell, Fred Moore barely played. I don't even know if Marlon Klein, although I think he was dressed and was in attendance for a couple of snaps, he played. Hogan Hansen, I don't think even played at all. The guys whose names were mentioned the most were third-team receivers. Jalen Hoffman, Channing Goodwin, Logan Forbes, and running backs Bryson Kudslaw, who had 105 yards in the game, and Micah Kapana. So
yeah,
these were names where it looked like people were fighting out for the 3rd or 4th roster spot.
Yeah, and if you've been following the program, we've been kind of waiting to watch Jadyn Davis, and you mentioned him, Steve, but I wasn't overly impressed with some of the throws. And again, this is the first time we're seeing him, the first time he's really been with all the lights on, metaphorically, if you will. Work to do at the quarterback position. We didn't come out of the spring with a clear savior. And as you pointed out, there's a reason why we're not going to announce who the starter is until very, very much before. I just wonder how the conversations are going behind the scenes about what the coaches saw, because it's obviously not about this necessarily, but it matters. It's really about what's happened over the last few weeks in practice and what they've seen.
So this is the 15th practice. They've seen the other 14. They obviously behind closed doors can do a lot more things that are transparent. This was very good at not being very transparent. because there was very little pass rush. No one's going to be sacking the quarterback. A tap on the shoulder was a sack for the quarterback. Defenses know they don't have to worry about the quarterback running on design runs in this situation. So they can cheat a little bit, if you know what I mean. They can be strictly in coverage. So these little things and advantages, the coaches know about. The players kind of figure it out as the game goes along. And we as the spectators just probably don't have enough true knowledge with all the different facets working in and out. That's an advantage of a quarterback playing against a vanilla defense, but not having the roster filled with first-team guys at their disposal. You've got a bunch of guys trying their hardest to make the third or fourth roster spot. There's a number of facets at play at this, but they're looking at the fundamentals. They're looking to see if they're, launching off the right foot, that type of thing, everything from the waist down. Sharon, we knew this. They're going to say the quarterback battle is going to go all the way through the final weekend of camp. That helps prevent anybody from transferring if everybody believes they still got an honest shot. And the great news is that both quarterbacks had all spring game long to show something. I would not be surprised if Mikey Keene was healthy enough that he could actually start the season opener, because Oklahoma's in week 2. And because of his experience, a 4-year guy with over 2,200 passing attempts under his belt, I think he's a guy who kind of knows what goes into a big environment. In fact, he did that last year as a member of Fresno State at the Big House in Ann Arbor.
That if there's one disappointment that we didn't get to see him and see if he was that steady hand that a lot of people think might play out that way, that he's kind of the guy who gets us going and then Bryce takes over eventually. We'll see, man. Anything else out there you see on offense?
A running back, Justice Haynes, the transfer from Bama, appeared to be as good as advertised. He had a 26-yard run. He shows the ability to have burst. He has power. He can run around people. Michigan's going to have a pretty good tandem in the Big Ten between he and Jordan Marshall, who had 105 yards against Bama in the Opt-Out Bowl, or formerly known as the ReliaQuest Bowl. Yeah,
I tweeted out a clip of that 26-yard run, and it got a lot of quote-unquote run from a lot of sources. And then, of course, the haters are out there because the safety or the DB kind of bid a little early, but he really sucked him in on the run. And it looked a lot like a Blake Corum. Go one way, bust around the line.
It's nice.
It was a few seconds that gave everyone a lot of excitement about Haynes.
At line, a surprising reveal from Sharon, saying that Greg Crippen is likely starting at center, Gio El-Hadi at left guard, and Andrew Sprague to be at right tackle. Not saying that that's where they're going to play, it's just saying it at all, because he's always been very good at keeping things very nebulous and in revealing anything. So that kind of shows that there's a couple of spots left that are still up for the competition in the summer, and that includes Evan Link, who started most of the season at left tackle and right tackle, Nathan Afobe, who's been coming on strong during the spring practices. You got transfer Brady Norton, who they projected at playing at one of the tackle spots, or at least competing for it, and then you got the true freshman and 5-star Andrew Babalola occupying, either the left tackles or the right guard spots between the four of them.
Yeah, at the end of last year, I think our identity became this really tough team to figure out, to handle, especially on defense. No one, I think, goes to a spring game hoping to see a lot of defense, Steve, but we did see some defense.
The defense generally wins in the spring scrimmages, and I looked around at other places too. For example, Wisconsin had their spring game Saturday as well. And what was the synopsis? The defense is ahead of the offense. And I think if you actually took a look at almost all of the spring games, they would say the defense is ahead of the offense. And there's a little bit faith that goes on that Michigan fans are going to have that the Michigan quarterback situation. I'm definitely have faith that it's going to be better. Is it going to be championship level better?
Faith is the Pee Wee's Playhouse word of the day, by the way, people. Have faith. It's a good word, though. Yeah, it's a good word. But in the context of the defense, it's really important. And we do have a lot of pieces back. And I like you said that because it probably explains a lot about what we saw. What else? Any new names out there, Steve, you saw?
Well, so Sharon said the Wolverine who stood out the most was edge rusher Dom Nichols. Now, he's likely going to back up Derek Moore, who could be an all-Big Ten player next season and potentially an All-American, and TJ Guy. But Nichols, who is just a sophomore, may be the next in line. And if there's something to have faith in, is that the defensive line for Michigan is going to come back reloaded. They're not rebuilding, they're reloading. And you can go up and down the list. You didn't know who David Ojabo was until he was David Ojabo. And then he and Hutchinson leave together, and everyone's going, what's Michigan going to do now? Well, then they had guys in the back, like Chris Jenkins follow things up before Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant. And there was other guys off the edge who you just didn't expect. Josiah Stewart, didn't just expect them to just all of a sudden show up and be all productive and all Big Ten players. But I got a feeling that they're just going to reload with new names. And Dom Nichols is one of those guys, if not this year, in 2026.
Love it. What about the linebackers?
Well, Michigan plays with two linebackers in their 4-2-5 lineup, and they have a great tandem in Jayshon Barnum and Ernest Hausman. Both of them were transfers out of Maryland and Nebraska a couple of years ago. Then you had Dreamy Rolder, who got some extensive time last season, but I think the next guy up may be a guy named Cole Sullivan, who's a sophomore whose name will be mentioned quite a bit on next week's TV broadcast, which we failed to say that despite watching the spring game in person, none of this was shown on TV. You'll see that next week on the Big Ten Network. So the weekend of the 26th and 27th is when you actually see that. Cole Sullivan is the guy's name that you'll hear quite often during the broadcast.
Yeah, and by the way, that lack of broadcasting was one reason, say, if you sent any clips out from the game, they were like eaten up by people. And it's probably a reason why I think it was closer to 30,000. But a lot of people showed up for this one is because you didn't have the opportunity to see it. So good stuff. We got some other names coming back, though.
The secondary's got some question marks. Obviously, Zeke Berry and Jair Hill coming back, but Zoljiah Edmonds looks like a possible starting corner that Michigan still needs. And they're looking at the way that they're playing safety and who's going to be the rover fifth guy at nickel. When it's all said and done, Michigan's probably going to look at the portal again for a tackle. Going to look perhaps for another potential receiver out there, and perhaps a veteran fifth-year quarterback in Case Keen won't be able to come back from this injury that he kind of suffered in the spring. It might take some time. So though there's some of the positions that they're probably looking at, but overall, there's much more needed on offense than there is in defense at this point.
I'll just say it this way. The reason Mikey Keene, you just feel like you need that steady option at quarterback as these guys develop, especially Underwood. So I think there's a lot of faith that we'll have that when we come around through the summer.
To piggyback on that, what do you mean specifically? I mean specifically going into a hostile environment and not melt. In Norman, where they're revamping their offense and had a pretty good defense, I'm not expecting Bryce Underwood or Jadyn Davis to melt in these situations. But again, in your spring game, you had 2 delay of game penalties and a fumbled snap to start. Those things can be really critical to winning and losing a game in a ranked matchup. Mikey Keene might be able to provide some of that stability, but obviously Bryce Underwood is the talent that Michigan will rely on to be able to go places if they just don't want to be a 7-8 win football team.
I love it. So, Steve, a couple sights and sounds. I actually was down on Main Street for a couple things on Friday night, and I got to say that a lot of things about this weekend had not a full game day feel, but a game day-ish feel. It was in the orbit of a vibe of a game day, and including the Friday night kind of vibe on Main Street. Went to the Chop House, hung out a little bit, ran into Dusty May, Steve. Finally met him in person.
At the Chop House?
At the Chop, yeah. How did he look? Busy. He looked busy. He looked like a man who had a lot of things going on. He was very polite, good to meet him. I've tried to work on getting him as a speaker in my class. I don't know if we've mentioned that in the podcast, and his schedule is very tough. He happens to be participating in the home run derby that I'm participating in later this week.
So you have another chance?
Well, and I asked him about, hey, have you taken any swings? He's like, man, I haven't picked up a bat in so long, like that kind of thing. But he has, here's a pro tip, like he's busy, but he's practiced a little bit already. Whether you're a dad in the suburbs like me or Dusty May, you want to go out there and try to hit a home run if you can. That's all.
Sure.
It doesn't matter. So he looked great. Very busy dude. What else? Pre-game, I went to an event at the Roth Club, which is on the east side, of course, the club level, where they do a lot of events with the athletic department. It was kind of a donors event. They had the national championship trophy there, so donors could get. And I say donors, I'm not saying like the big ballers. This was like 300 or 400 people up there. Ward spoke, talked a little bit about NIL. Just kind of his look. It still feels new, but we got to be a part of this. We need your support. So made a little pitch for it. Fun thing to do before the game. And again, kind of added to that vibe that a lot of people were there. And we hung out with a the Michigan defender Joe Simon for a little bit, Steve. Saw Coach Borges. That was fun, man. That was
Yes,
cool.
it's a great time to catch up, not only catch up, but talk about football's future and things like that. And everyone's speculating on how things are going to go and makes for a fun conversation.
Well, you know what occupies a lot of people's time, Steve? Worrying
that?
about IT problems and challenges.
It can ruin you.
It can ruin you. That's why you need the best people. That's why you need Maverick Technology Partners, managed services. They got engineers, project management, which is, I tell my students about. It was a passion of mine in my career, and now I'm teaching. But I still take lessons from project management. You need good project managers. You need good leaders, CIO placement services. You need it all. They do it all. MaverickTechnologyPartners.com. Thank you for your support during the spring here, Maverick. MaverickTechnologyPartners.com. Check them out.
You should. I always thought that the worst thing that you could see on a computer was the blue screen of death. That's just a small problem now.
Yeah. The worst thing used to be, honestly, like email, you don't think about it, right? But email's down, services are down, customers can't. That is the metaphorical blue screen of death in an organization. That's why you need good people and good leadership, I would say, Steve. There you go. Maverick.
Speaking of good leadership, the NFL draft is coming up this Thursday. But it's just like, wow, all of a sudden it is coming up this Thursday. This is something I used to do on a weekly basis because the lines were drafting so high. There'd be a lot to talk about in the NFL draft. Well, the NFL draft has snuck up on me.
Which is hard to do, by the way.
Yeah.
The way they cover it,
Yeah.
it has kind of snuck up. I wonder if it's also the spring game being later and all that too is a factor. But yeah, the Lions as local people we're always in like a key position. So Michigan should figure prominently.
Yeah, there's 4 Wolverines that could be drafted in the first round. The order hasn't really changed a whole lot. Mason Graham looks like the solid number 5, but there are some mock drafts where Jacksonville decides to go in a different direction. And if that happens, then Mason Graham's status kind of goes down, flirting to around being just inside the top 10. Will Johnson, unfortunately, just hasn't been able to participate in anything. So he's had enough injuries and no one's been able to work him out. And they're just going to have to rely on their game tape. And I'm going to tell you, general managers are going to be sweating on that because it becomes a gamble at that point to take somebody that high. If he slides down, then at some point he becomes like a real bargain. Will Johnson went from a top 5 pick to somebody who could fall out of the top 20.
Ouch.
Potentially. Now, the consensus is he'll be in the early teens.
When it's all said and done, Will Johnson's going to be just fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When it's
no
all
matter
said.
what happens.
Whether it's his first contract or his second.
He has been. I know of this young man a little bit. He spoke in my class. He's been planning for this for a long time, and I think he understands exactly how this will go. And I think he'll be fine in the long run here. But we'll see.
Colson Loveland is the next guy. A lot of people see him, in the second half of the first round, but depending on what teams decide to go up to catch Tyler Warren, the Penn State tight end, Colson Loveland could go as high as 14.
Yeah.
To the Indianapolis Colts. A lot of people figure the Colts will take a tight end, but if another team decides to take Tyler Warren instead first, then the Colts are likely to pick him at 14.
And tight ends have been just the value of tight ends in the NFL since Gronk and before, but it has just it's on the come, it's on the rise, and I think a lot of people see him as a guy you can block, but you can also put him in the slot and put him out wide, even if you have to. And he's an absolute beast. So we'll see what happens.
It's changing. It used to be you're an offensive lineman who occasionally can catch a ball.
Yeah.
To being equal, and now they're kind of looking at tight ends who can actually catch more than they can block.
It's Barner, who plays for Seattle now, who played with Loveland, was the big blocking tight end who could catch the ball. Loveland can kind of block. He can block enough. He has the size, but he really had the hands. Which would you rather have? And in the NFL, I think the value, it's epitomized. He's going to go higher than Barner. And Barner's had success with Seattle, so we'll see.
And Kenneth Grant's the questionable one in the first round. A lot of mock drafts have Kenneth Grant late in the first round. Some have him in the second, but that'd be kind of nice to it's like an award ceremony. It's almost more important than getting the All-American AP status or things like that to see if you can get a Wolverine into the first round.
Speaking of draft, Steve, so I went to an event for the women's basketball team on Monday. They had a little fundraiser, raised a lot of money for NIL.
Yeah, was it the Blue Leprechaun?
Yeah, it was at the LEP, and it was really cool, and the players were there. By the way, the transfers that we talked about, I assume they're still in their home schools finishing up or whatever they have to do. They weren't there. But it was a little bit of like a public banquet for the team, so the seniors spoke and things like that. It was great. But later that night, Steve, Jordan Hobbs got drafted by the Seattle Storm, and she was there, and I was talking to her. Her agent was pinging her, and apparently, I think I mentioned on the last podcast that she had a really good combine.
You did. A little birdie told you.
Yeah, she got picked up in the 34th round. This is an amazing story. So, obviously, WNBA, we all know, is not as lucrative, and getting drafted isn't the life-changing money it can be in the NBA. But this is a young woman who had options. Like, she was in Ross. She had offers and career opportunities and was thinking that was going to be what she was going to do. She was done with basketball. And suddenly, with the rise she had at the end of the season, I happen to know that she started, well, maybe there's more. So she had an agent and a team from Italy said, hey, we want you to play no matter what. So she thought about it. Then she went to the combine, and all these teams started talking to her and interviewing the assistant coaches, which is what they do, right? And Bob's your uncle, man. She's going to Seattle. And Jordan Hobbs, amazing story. Really cool.
It is a great draft story. It's something to follow up. If she makes it, it will be an extraordinary feat for her to do so, which is why you want to pay particular attention to it, to whether she accomplishes it. Because last year, only 2 players drafted outside the top 18. Jordan went 34th.
Yeah.
He actually played in a WNBA game last year.
All right, we'll see it. Another person like Will Johnson, Jordan Hobbs, is going to be fine in life. She's going to be great. Steve, I mentioned social media with my Justice Haynes clip. Another clip made the rounds, and you got to love when clips, they transcend sports, but this is the kind of things your kids, your wife, your parents saw. What happened at the White House, Steve, with the national championship trophy?
There was a little bit of a discombobulation.
A
separation between the trophy and the base. It's sort of like an omen to Ohio State.
Fumbalaya.
And the party that holds the office. I don't know. But yeah, that's the way it was looked at, depending on what side you're on.
Everyone knows what we're talking about, of course. The national championship trophy, a bad exchange, falling apart on whatever TV was covering it.
They were too concentrated on the RPO and didn't get past the fundamentals.
And obviously, the throngs of fans who can't stand either the Trump White House and or the Buckeyes had a feeding frenzy.
That would be Ann Arbor.
Yeah, there you go.
That'd be most of Ann Arbor that did. The trophy came off the base. They could put it back together.
Yeah.
It was klutzy to say the least, but at least they didn't have to replace the trophy. And so I did a little research, Greg, and I was stunned to what I was able to find about the National College Football Playoff Trophy. You know, in Alabama in 2017, a player's father tripped on a rug, dislodging the $35,000 handmade Waterford Crystal Trophy, separating itself from the base, and it shattered. Can you imagine that dad who goes, whoops?
No.
And destroys the national championship trophy.
We do have those moments in life as whatever we are, parents, that you are around something like that, and it does cross your mind, like the last thing you want to do is either be a part of this somehow, break something, harm the experience for this event that you're close to. Like, because we do get close to things. Yep. Like, there are things that could have happened during press conferences and otherwise that we could become the story. Like, it's in the back of your head. Like stupid question.
Right.
Like, now. Like, could happen.
Yes.
Like,
if you ask a question that goes the wrong way, whether it was your intent or not.
Yeah, or you take a beating from the person at the podium.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That can happen. Now, usually our worst situation is when we greet somebody, whether it's a handshake or a fist bump. And usually it turns into rock, paper, scissors.
Yes.
And it's never usually right. But this dad, probably after breaking the trophy, is wondering if his player is going to be released.
Yes.
And just in the sheer moment, am I going to pay for this? And is my son no longer on the team? Also in the SEC, where it means more, a Florida football recruit, a high school player, fumbled the trophy, shattering the championship Waterford Crystal deal. And guess what, Greg? It wasn't the only time that's happened to the Gators. They also had to replace another football national championship trophy in an event that is very similar to what happened at Michigan Stadium at the Roth Club yesterday. A fan posing with then head coach Jim McElwain also knocked the trophy off the base while posing for a picture with the trophy and the coach, causing it to shatter.
Brutal.
Allegedly, Charles Woodson dropped the Vince Lombardi trophy. I did not know this.
So you saw this online.
I did not. Yeah, I saw this online.
I have people in Woodson's orbit, and I can find out if this is true or not. Go ahead.
Allegedly dropped the Vince Lombardi trophy from Aaron Rodgers, who passed it to him in the team shower following the 2011 Super Bowl.
Awkward. A soapy trophy came flying across from Rodgers. Oh, boy. Okay. But I say all this talk, like I've been begging the athletic department to there is a replica version of the little brown jug that exists. And I think it's just as old. It's like the trophy case version. It's actually in Sharon's office. If you see pictures of Sharon, that's not the real little brown jug up on his thing. That's actually this copy. I think they should put that one out there because eventually someone's going to drop that jug. So I worry about it. You found some other ones.
Yeah. Go ahead. Why don't you read the first one?
Okay. Maria Sharapova, of course, the beautiful tennis player. Pete Weber, not as beautiful, but probably more accomplished in his sport, I would say. For both losing the U.S. Open trophy when hoisted it over his head, the lid fell on Sharapova's head. Weber shattered, stunned. But since it's bowling, as Steve points out here, they won't replace it because bowling is in a different lane, so to speak.
Exactly.
Yes. Well, and they design these trophies knowing that there's going to be photos, and that's why they often have the piece separate, right? So you got to kind of know that going in, that the top might come off, right? Yeah. The bowl, the whatever, the ball. Anyway.
Well, in both examples, the players lifted it over their head and started kind of shaking it a little bit to say, yes, I'm excited about this. And that's when it got dislodged. And
good. And Pete Weber made it onto the Professor and the Pundit. And Maria Sharapova, who's great, who also appeared in Billions, I believe.
Yes, she did a couple of times.
There you go.
A couple of times.
We have range. Go ahead.
My favorite, though, is Real Madrid. During the team parade for winning the Copa del Rey. Now, is that a big trophy or is that a big deal?
Don't know.
All right. Well, anyway, it was big enough that they had a parade, and Sergio Ramos didn't just drop the championship trophy from the top of a double-decker bus. He did it not from the back, not from the side, but from the very front of the bus, where after the bounce, it got rolled over by the front tires, crushing it. And the lesson here is only the goalie should be allowed to handle the trophy,
right,
don't you think?
Which is basically like a cartoonish, like something get destroyed, that it goes off the front and gets rolled over, which is beautiful. Steve, nice job on the trophy research.
I think it shows when you've got $35,000 per trophy, and you may be responsible for paying it. You might want to have a backup plan in your financial matters to be able to save up for such eventualities.
That is such brilliant insight. And we talk about financial matters all the time, Steve. No, I didn't join. We did not have a post-game show at Oscars, but apparently some of the regular people joined. But that's might be, Steve, where we talk about things like the price of gold and the investments in this wild market. And a lot of people are talking about saving right now because they're not sure about the future, to your point. Do you have that reserve? Do you have your money budgeted? Do you have a financial plan? Where should they go, Steve?
You should go to Nick Hopwood at peakwm.com, and he'll tell you the best way to do it based on what your needs are. You have to assess what your individual needs are. Some want to be able to save. They're close to retirement, and they want to make sure that their preservation doesn't go away. So he'll help you figure out what you need to do, and there's a lot of different options. Right now, the savings rate is still pretty high, and they're not even sure when they're going to cut interest rates or potentially raise it more because of inflation.
Yeah, and you know what? It's transitioning just quickly, Steve, to NIL. The team had an autograph session that was sold out before this. I mentioned that, I think, in the last podcast, the football team. I know they raised a lot of money. Ward talked to the donors about NIL, and I talked to a few alums who were there pregame, and they are talking about private equity now getting involved in these more advanced structures. But a lot of this has to do with that. What is the future? How do you mitigate risk? What if we need another quarterback or the positions you need? There's a lot of ties to NIL. Call Nick. We love him. What else, Steve? Oh, I had good news this week.
What's that?
Listen.
If you have a dream come true,
a fan of this show, I think Corso is an important part of Game Day and his legacy and all that. And Game Day is such a big part of our lives. But there's two things that I really got on my craw is that Corso's time on the big table had passed, and I feel like he was put into, or he put himself into, whatever, really awkward conversations because of his declining health. And I couldn't take, like, I felt bad. I felt awkward. I felt like they were covering up for him, and I just thought there were better ways to maybe have him on pre-produced segments or things like that. The other thing I hate about Game Days, we've talked about, is just how much they celebrate themselves. This is the 257th straight week that Washington State has had the flag here, and this is the 32nd time the Buckeyes, have been the mascot head selection, and just all those different ways. It's like college football is good enough. You have a great show. Talk about the games. Yes, talk about history and the culture of college athletics, but does it have to be so much about yourself? So Lee Corso announces he's retiring. And I'm like, okay, good. I think that's a good thing. He's moving on.
Oh, here comes our first hate mail. We've never received hate mail yet.
Yeah.
This might be the first time. Go ahead.
But what are we subject to now, of course, on all the social media? The same thing. A nonstop parade of the best, headgear moments.
For the next 4 months.
Yeah. And then it's not going to stop, by the way, into the season, because they're not just going to say, Lee's not with us anymore, let's keep moving on, the show. No. They're going to, I know what they're going to do is it's not over. So happy trails, Lee Corso.
He's got one more broadcast.
What's that?
He's effectively leaving August 31st. Well, that's week 1.
Okay. All right.
So he'll be around for that broadcast, I'm sure.
All right. So it was enough. It was enough for me. And of course, Lee Corso was involved in one of the greatest plays in Michigan football history. That, of course, he was the coach at Indiana for the great Johnny Wangler Anthony Carter game, ranting on the sideline. If you watch the full clip,
the play before.
Yeah, so he'll be a part of not only college football, sure, but Michigan football history forever. But happy trails, Lee Corso. Steve, we've talked about bowling. We like leisure sports here. This is not our lane, but we talked about the Masters a little bit last time. And I just got to say, we really set it up as this incredible duel with Bryson versus Rory. And there was a duel, Steve. It was an all-time classic scene, afternoon of golf. But the duel was with one guy. It was all in Rory's head. Yes. It was all in Rory's head.
Rory versus Rory.
It was Rory versus Rory. Bryson, it kind of faded. One of the scenarios that I thought would help him, which was he literally lost the lead in the first hole after he double bogeyed the first. And I go, okay, that'll be good because he'll shake it off. And he said that did help him a little bit, but that's not what it was about. What an unpredictable, wild Masters. We don't need to get into it, but it did prove to be, in a different way than I had imagined, absolutely an all-timer.
And you did a pretty good job outlining how you thought it might go.
I tried.
You put yourself out there at risk to being really looking bad. I celebrate you, Greg, for your prognostication skills on how Sunday would go. A couple of just finer points for me. Justin Rose had an amazing Sunday.
He did.
He had the best round of the tournament. After the 10th hole, which he parred, it was the only par he had in the back nine. It was 6 birdies and 2 bogeys the rest of the way, forcing a playoff. He was amazing. The other thing was Jim Nantz on the back nine, I think said 3 times. 2 of them were, this is the best shot of Rory McIlroy's career. And you know what the third one was?
What?
This was probably the worst shot of Rory McIlroy's career.
Yeah.
So that kind of, as soon as he really had a bad shot, he followed it up with a really good one.
Yeah, it did something to you. And Nance did a really good job overall. He got a little syrupy on the regular 18 when Rory was trying to win it and close it out and hit a bad shot. He started to wax about young Rory McIlroy and a golf ball machine. He didn't finish the story because Rory put it in the sand, and I was like, I'm texting people, oh, Nance, you poured the syrup a little too early, didn't you? He ended up finishing this story, during the playoff, but they did a really good job. And I gotta say, man, it's one of those things that sports can do is you went on an emotional ride that you didn't even know you were emotional about. Like, I found myself, I slammed the floor or my chair with my hand when Rory missed the first 18 hole, the 6-footer or whatever, an 18 that could have won it. And I didn't even know I was rooting for Rory. And then I found myself, because I don't know. I don't know what happened. And then, of course, he wins it and he falls to his knees. And whatever your professional coaching is to conduct yourself all went out the window with Rory. And he wore it. He wore the anguish and all of the years of coming up short and the near misses. Boy, he wore it, and he was rubbing his head like some of us rub our head when we're anxious or nervous. And he was doing it when he was walking back to the clubhouse. And of course, CBS did another nice job, and they learned this they did the same thing with Tiger when he won it. They just let the camera roll, and it was just a beautiful, beautiful moment. And I found myself not only teared up, I had a couple moments where I had to catch my breath, Steve.
In that moment, when you see him go to his knees, the last 5 hours, we saw how excruciating it was for him, but he didn't show it up until it was over.
Yep. He did a good job. Steve, what's next for us? By the way, our last episode, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Our most popular of the spring. We got a great, great loyal audience. We know that through all the numbers, so just a huge thank. We could be back. Maybe the NCAA comes down with something a little more tangible. They came out with something, but more. Maybe there's big portal news. Maybe there's other sporting news. We'll be back sometime before football season, like we did, like we've done.
When we said maybe we'll be back, we'll definitely be back. It's just a matter of when.
Oh, sorry.
And it will be probably right before the season starts, and then go continuously throughout the Michigan football season in 2025. But if something were to be a big deal, if the bat signal came out, we'll rush back here to the cave and put something together for sure.
Awesome. Now, this probably wouldn't get us back in the studio, but the men's gymnastics national championship happened to be at Chrysler. Man, my son, we were watching it together, and he's like, "Why aren't we there, Dad?" And I'm like, "Gosh, we should have gone." Because, man, there's something exciting about gymnastics when all the different teams are competing at the same time and they're rolling the score, and I don't understand the math, but the announcers are trying to explain to you how the math's going to work. And they won it. They won it on the last event that they did by a fraction of a point. And they win. And I happen to have one of the players in one of my classes, Steve. I'm so excited for the gymnastics national title. Won at Chrysler.
It was full.
Yeah,
it was
crazy.
vocal.
Yeah.
And that's what you wanted to see. And Chrysler represented itself well in the national spotlight of ESPN 2, I think. Going through that, I think if you have a lot of good knowledge about gymnastics and how things work, I'm sure the Michigan people were probably feeling fairly confident as long as there wasn't something ridiculous happened in the vault, or whether Stanford didn't do something incredibly unforeseen in the parallel bars, that they were feeling probably pretty confident about Michigan winning, but it only came down to a little more than 1/10 of a point.
Yeah, and if you're wondering, well, what level in the big scheme of things is men's gymnastics in college? No, there were Olympians out there. The guys on the U.S. Olympic team play for, compete for Michigan, compete at Michigan as well. It was beautiful. Steve, I mentioned the Softball Academy Thursday. This is going to drop this week, Thursday at the Hutch. Come by, join the Chest Protectors. I'll be in the home run derby. I got the call from Hutch. I'm going to, speaking of Olympians, Chidi's going to work with me. One of the Olympians on the softball team, silver medalist, I believe, is going to have a coaching session for the HR Derby participants. I don't know if Dustin's going to be there, but I don't know, man. I got to get one out. I want to put one out one of these years. I feel like I got the brawn. I got the stick-to-itiveness, the willingness. Just never been a big softball player or baseball player. That's probably my weakness here. So we'll see if I can put one out. They're going to raise a lot of money for the American Cancer Society. It's one of my favorite charity events that I've ever been a part of. So there you go. Any other plans for you before we get out of here?
Nope, just going to be look at what I always do, preview football teams for the Big Ten 50 WTKA, Michigan's opponents. I'll be starting that next month, going through them all.
Awesome. And I'll be preparing for my fall semester, which is looking great as far as enrollment. I'm excited. And other than that, once more, a big thank you to our sponsors, led by Nick Hopwood, our new sponsor, Maverick Technology Partners, and most of all to you, the listeners. We're signing off for the spring. what a great year.
That was fantastic. And again, remember, everyone who needs to know, Michigan men's gymnastics, you're undisputed national champions. Go Blue, Greg.
Let's go. Go Blue.